Greetings and good evening, folks. Welcome to the Joko this evening, to our Joko conversation, our first Joko conversation of the year. And we're going to use the first Joko conversation of the year to look back at this previous year as well as ahead to this, what may be unfolding for us in this present year. So, welcome to the Joko. Welcome to 2025. Let me bring on my partner and comrade, Tasha.
Okay. Hello and greetings, everybody. And as a friend of mine and I say, happy change of the Gregorian calendar,
Mm-hmm.
which we happily, very happily, and fortunately understand to be derived from the Africans in ancient Egypt and modified and worked around for uses and needs. Um, But yes, everybody, happy new year, happy new cycle and everything. And of course, we always begin um, by acknowledging our own lineage. Our own lineage is descendants of Africa. We are children of Africa who stand aware that any work that we do for our liberation, we are doing on colonized territories of the First Nations people of what many of them call Turtle Island, um, and that we do so by the grace and by their continued grace and hospitality, and certainly the grace and hospitality of their ancestral spirits. And something I wanted to put in today in the context of New Year's celebration, and I have to read it because I understand that I'm getting old, or this is
Mm.
what they say is happening. This is they say the memory and concentration is the first thing to go. But I will read and not try to remember. And so, first of all, I want to, oftentimes that acknowledgement, this practices of acknowledging First Nations folk is called a land acknowledgement. And some people have anxiety or kind of agonize over that notion and don't feel it's enough or what have you. So I'm going to call it, excuse me, an Indigenous power acknowledgement. Okay, so that it's not only the land um, and the sad and brutal legacy of the colonizer, but the ongoing process of the reclamation and uplifting of culture, the relentless commitment to the saving and protection of the people, um, and the ongoing success and uh, advancement and progression toward reclaiming sovereignty, full sovereignty, reclaiming land, um, and wealth, and the future generations. So, Indigenous power acknowledgement. In this time of varied winter season and New Year celebrations, I want to call out our Indigenous relatives' reclamations of the various winter solstice and winter seasons, New Year celebrations, their own celebrations of this time of year. As part of the campaign to kill the Indian and save the man, traditional ceremonies, including those commemorating this time of year, were suppressed through criminalization for close to a 100-year period, punishable by destabilization, economic destabilization, at a time when the US government was in a position to ration out food to the nations. They can deny those rations if they're, caught practicing traditional ceremonies and religious
Mm-hmm.
activities, punishable by death, as the massacre at Wounded Knee serves to testify, as part of that resistance and determination to practice the culture, um, men, women, and children, right, were, shot down. What was it? Up to 300, probably more, if that's a US government statistic. Folks just massacred, shot down in what I think is called, what I've read, it's called the largest shooting massacre still in US history. On their way to observe the sun dance for the summer solstice period. And so there was the license and um, what is the word? The Can't think of the word, so I'll have to go past that. But it was the action of the American government to kill folk on the way rather than to have them practice their culture, which we as Africans in every part of the world absolutely understand. Um, so those practices were outlawed in the early 1880s in North America and Canada. And of course, it's a complex story of resistance and defiance, and the culture was never fully seated, uh, but it was preserved, right? It was preserved and flourished by the time of the European legalization, right? Legalization in Canadian and US terms in 1951 for Canada and in 1978 for the US. So, um, absolutely, absolutely unimaginable. But,
Mhm.
you're gonna outlaw somebody's religious practices.
Those dates make me wonder. It makes me wonder about, what we call Latin America.
Mhm,
And if they've gone, undergone similar processes because they certainly underwent the other similar processes, right? Outlawing and the indigenous life ways, and making sure people were baptized and whatnot.
mhm,
And that was certainly part of what what's the word I'm looking for? Fueled the right wing opposition that tried, attempted the coup and did successfully coup for a while in Bolivia.
mm,
Because when Evo Morales came in, and comes in, as
mhm,
proudly indigenous, right? And
mm,
um, and
mhm,
that there's a sector in the society that that is still vehemently
hmm,
anti-indigenous. I mean, really, it's even it's a structural thing, right? The modern system is structurally anti-black and anti-indigenous, right? I mean, our immiseration is necessary for its for the system to work, right?
mhm,
On many levels. So I wonder about that, right? Are there dates for like the legalization, right? Of it's just crazy even to think about, right? The legalization of indigenous culture, like in Brazil, um,
mhm,
or Ecuador, or any of the other countries, right? Colombia. Um,
mhm,
that's part of what makes the Venezuelan revolution meaningful,
mm,
to a lot of people, to black and indigenous people in Venezuela, right? Because of that in some, I guess, in some ways, the cultural aspects of revolution and
mhm,
structure, right?
mhm.
Um, but both of our guests have arrived.
Yes.
Shall we continue and then bring them on? I'll read the next little piece
Okay.
because we're gonna stick, yeah, like it's easier with the script.
It's
Right?
easier with the script.
Script. So, as we said, we want to do a reflections on 2024 and a look ahead to 2025. The loose theme is opposition and opportunity. Basic questions: What do we see as key events, issues, trends, actions, moments, etc. for liberation in 2024? And then in the light of these keys, what might the work of liberation look like in 2025, right? So liberation focused. Now, I'm going to stop there on the script, right? Because I think that says it all. We will bring on our guests, right? And we'll go ahead and introduce them. Bring on Brother James and Brother Matsamela. And I've got the little bios here, so I'll just keep reading.
Excellent.
All right. What happened? We lost James. He'll be back. So I'll start with Matsamela's. Dr. Matsamela Odom. Pardon me for stopping. I just realized, like I always do, we didn't even introduce ourselves, or I introduced you, Tasha.
Sure did it right.
But I never introduced myself.
Right.
I thought about that at the poetry reading we did. I actually never introduced myself, but anyway, I'll come back around to that. Dr. Matsamela Odom is the international president of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and Black is Back Coalition Steering Committee member. He's a Black Studies educator at San Diego State University and other schools, including San Diego City College and San Diego Mesa College. Odom has published numerous articles on the history of Black people throughout Southern California, analyzing the civil rights and Black power movements, police brutality, segregation, the crack cocaine epidemic, hip hop music, and Black resistance. Welcome, Brother Matsamela.
Welcome. Welcome. I really appreciate being a part of the Joko conversations. It's such a vital place to be, especially the way through which really democratize the understanding of education and really the role of intellectuals in the African community. So yeah, I really am happy to be here. I just ended a study myself right now on the theory of African internationalism. We have weekly studies from 5 Pacific to 7 Pacific on Thursday evenings, led by the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, of which we try to do this exact same stuff. I always think about it being an educator, a trained educator, that Liam Neeson movie where he says, I got a specific set of skills. Every time I'm getting into some debate with people, I think about Liam Neeson and say, I got a specific set of skills, that I've honed over decades,
That's right.
So it's, but anyway, yeah. But I use these skills for the people, so I really appreciate being here.
Yes. Let's bring on James. Comrade James. James M. Simmons is a human rights attorney, a professor in the Africana Studies Department at California State University, Northridge. He is a political activist and has worked for human rights and self-determination of oppressed people and against exploitation and oppression of people by individual predators, organized predators, and governments over the last 5 decades. He's also a firm believer in training and organizing for personal and collective self and community defense. Welcome, Brother James.
Oh, happy to be here. And apologies for the darkness. I'm in beautiful downtown Africa Town within sight of Bidon Kamati Park, otherwise known as Lamert Park.
Yeah.
But we don't like Mr. Lamert because he was a diehard racist who tried as hard as he could to keep Black folks out of this neighborhood. And I hope to reverse the trend of so-called gentrification. But I'm in the dark. Hopefully you could at least see spots of me.
Yeah, we can.
We can. And at a certain point, there was some light that did hit you when you sat forward a bit. something hit you and brought more light to your face, but we can make you
Yeah,
out.
those are cars going by.
Okay.
Mhm.
I've been moving all day, and happy to be part of the conversation.
Mhm.
It's wonderful to have
And
you.
actually, what you said, that's okay. I said I would introduce myself, huh? Because I
Yes.
never do. All right. So, yes, I'm Brother Youssef, a poet, professor of English and Cultural Studies, member of the Joko. Happy to be here. And I think what you said, James, is actually a good jumping off point. Thinking about Mr. Lemert, right? And then taking that that self-determinist action, right, of claiming space, right, claiming Africa Town, and renaming the park after a stalwart in the liberation struggle. And it's just the sort of thing that the right wing in this country is reacting to, right? The reactionaries. That part of, to use Elon Musk language, the woke mind virus, right? That's just the sort of thing that ticks them off, right? Or, gets their blood boiling. So looking back at this last year, that was one of the things we wanted to look at, right? The rise in popularity at various levels, right? Of like right wing ideology, and people seeing that as oppositional, though, right? And in some ways, it is oppositional. And there are no guarantees, right, that the working class will move left, right, when it rises in opposition to the status quo. So any thoughts, right? Any comments on what this last year, has been, with the seeming lurch to the right? And you don't have to confine it to these borders, by the way, either, because I know there are other things to look at too, oppositionally to that. Anyway, I'm gonna quit chattering. Let somebody else talk.
Well, Huru, I like to jump off because I had some look at the numbers and even from the election, because I think some people use the election as the suggestion that there's a move toward right. And there's even sort of materialist explanations where African men are most likely to be in certain trades, and that's why they will be sort of upset with the X, Y, and Z. And maybe appeal to some of the populist rhetoric of Trump. Well, Trump didn't get any more votes than he got in 2020. He didn't get any more votes. The people who elected Trump are white people, white women. Because it seems like people want to. I've sit around people. Well, trust me, I done sat in the African community and people want to blame everybody but white women. Let's talk about Hispanics. Let's talk about why Mexicans want to be white. Let's talk about white people. Why white people want to be white?
Want to be white?
That's the contradiction.
Yes.
Look. If we can have this conversation about why every other group want to be white, you don't want to talk about white people in defense of whiteness right now. Then you're not having a central conversation of the contradiction. So no more. The numbers suggest no more Africans voted for Trump in 2024 than voted in 2020 for Trump. No more. What happens is you see, that's why even the liberal media has to say a rising percentage. Well, if you got 4 apples and I got 8 apples, this year you got 4 apples and I got 6 apples, you got a higher percentage of apples. You got the same amount of apples. But you got a higher percentage of apples because I got less apples. So the question isn't how'd you get more? The question is, why do I have less? And I think why do we have less? Why have Africans fled away from the Democrats? Why did the Democrats have to run a anti-democratic campaign in Georgia to tell people don't vote for people in California? Tell people don't vote for Dr. West and Dr. Abdullah, that's Democratic campaign, they was literally leading, telling people, don't vote for these people. Then that's one set of the level of the contradiction. Of course, the other level of the contradiction is that around the world there is what we is the success of the rebellion of colonized people of the world, anti-colonial resistance of the world, and as the oppressed people of the world, the colonized people of the world resist, we see the base of this society become shaky, and when the base of the society becomes shaky, the consciousness of the colonizers and other people who identify with the colonial, with the empire, becomes shaky in itself as well. So the world just doesn't seem the same to them. So they want someone who's going to sort of make the world, bring the world back into its rightful position or something like that. Hopefully that's that. There's, I'm saying a couple different things, and maybe it's a little bit abstract, but one victory I would like to point towards, of course, is the victory of the Uhuru 3 in court, the defeat of the FARA Act, on the lesser charge of which there was a wrongful conviction. There was no prison time ordered, no fine ordered by the judge, who even said that even if I just give you a fine, all you would do is go out there and raise the resources to pay the fine. So there was an anti-colonial victory there. But of course, we also see the anti-colonial victories and struggles taking place on the continent and the stuff in Palestine. You know, the truth is that you can't explain the reason why they've had sustained resistance for almost 14, 15 months. Actually, almost 15 months without explaining the fact that the continent, right, directly connected to it, has been in anti-colonial resistance for the last 3 to 4 years. You know, so it's not as, you know, so yeah, I'm saying a lot of stuff, but yeah, hopefully it makes sense.
I'd like to jump in and insert again this piece where we started in our introduction, talking about the criminalization of culture and the relationship of that to the, you know, what this authoritarianism looks like, this iteration of authoritarian far rightism looks like, with having this really heavy theocratic vibe, this really heavy, right, as folks are saying, the quote unquote reassertion of white supremacy, the quote unquote Western chauvinism, and all these kinds of things. And they are leading with, right, they see as key, right, this criminalizing of dissent, witness critique, and asserting the narratives, including the identitarian, the white nationalist, you know, we are God's gift, literally, to the world narrative, you know, in popular thinking. So that, you know, what I think is often seen as some kind of distension between cultural and material revolutionary approaches, they're always in tandem. And this centrality and the importance of attacking thought, right? Of policing thought, of policing identity, of policing everybody's relationship, right? Internal notions and self relationship to the white supremacist narrative. It's like literally, it's key. You know, the white supremacist, heteronormative, patriarchal, all of that stuff. There's like, you know what? Our game won't work without it, without the cultural component. So that criminalizing, you know, of indigenous practices everywhere is informative. It's instructive. and, lets us, know just how important this thought piece is. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, just in short, I just want to say that I agree. I think as the resistance of colonized people, as the social system becomes shaky and they begin to cling to, and their identity becomes in jeopardy, they begin to cling to it. So and reject anything, cling to these very reactionary understandings of whiteness, white nationalist identity, and that explains the attacks that we've seen against, like you said, any expression of African culture or cultural. So let's just say, in short, the attacks on Black studies, the attacks on DEI initiatives, and all those things. And I think that's an important conversation to have, because some people, look, the issues that people like us might have with DEI initiatives at the liberal institutions that we work at is not the reason why the white right and the state is attacking DEI initiatives. So let's just be clear. There's two positions here. So when, you know what I mean? When we come in and we say, well, here's the problems, and then someone says, well, DEI initiatives, well, they're attacking DEI initiatives because they can't even with that level of the truth. You know what I mean? Or what's the other stuff? The legal thing. What's the Comrade James? The critical race theory. They're attacking that because they can't even deal with that, and we know that that's not. Amilcar Cabral ain't write that. You know what I mean? Audre Lorde ain't write that. So, but they can't even deal with that because it gets you towards speaking of the true relationship that colonialism has with colonial subjects and stuff. So I think you're correct, and I think we can clearly anticipate a ramping up of those attacks. Comrade James in Africatown, and I know tomorrow Africatown Coalition is organizing a demonstration in defense of the unhoused over in Skid Row. So and an important fight that looks like over there, because I mean, one wave that they're even using to attack African self-determination in Africa is through outside funding coming in to make it seem like Africatown is the new Africatown. You know what I mean? So I know that Comrade James, we've been at demonstrations together and things like that. So I don't want to take up too much. I want to, leave some space for Comrade James. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, you take all the space you want. Okay.
Hey, if you're gonna be there tomorrow, I got some flag pins for you too, Comrade James.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not finished moving, but hopefully I will by the time demo time comes around. But yeah, this it's over the last year, like the stuff you went over. And there were some victories. A lot of space was taken up with this election. People putting effort into that, trying to understand it, thinking that this the most reactionary and the most tired of rhetoric, the repetition by the now president-elect. It was like, who would think that he was going to be reelected? But with Project 2025, that to me, it was almost like a cover, like distract people with 2025. And I firmly believe that he doesn't give a damn about 2025. It's going to be his program, whatever he decides, whatever's going to benefit him and his cronies. That's the direction the state will go. They're talking about dissolving the administrative state, the so-called deep state. But the deep state is nothing but the bureaucracy. But they want to dissolve that and replace people who have been there for decades and who have developed skills as even as maybe inefficient as they are, like the post office or other bureaucracies, I think it would be a far cry better than these people trying to dissolve the post office and install, as they've done, try to install their own cronies who will act on behalf of this would-be emperor, would-be dictator. Again, we've had some victories. On the other hand, Palestine, I think over 100,000 Palestinians have been murdered. The conflict in Congo continues to take lives. The neo-colonial project by Britain and France and the rest of these imperialists continues. Hawaii is still captive. Puerto Rico is still captive. All those, and just talking about the United States, all those little, what people call commonwealths or territories, those are captive nations. This is a continuing colonial project. And so, well, yeah, we have some victories, but we have a hell of a lot of work we need to do. And trying to get people to understand that everything is not good and fine, and everything is not just about, a certain amount of inflation. People's independence has been compromised. People's independence has been violated. Yes, their self-determination has been violated. And we need to look. I just experience spurts of ecstasy when I see what's happening in Benin and other places where people are trying to and working to get to assert their self-determination in the tradition of so many freedom fighters. So Traoré and the new Sankara and others, people turning their back. It's like, we're not paying you for colonizing us. You need to pay us for the theft and the oppression and the exploitation of our people and our resources. It's like, it's silly. I mean, it's criminal for these imperialists, neo-colonialists, to talk about Africa, Asia, and Latin America, paying them back for colonialism. It's crazy. When it should be just the opposite. So I'm happy we have some victories, but it's just that we need to work a lot harder and take heart in the victories, but work to eliminate this neo-colonialism, exploitation, and what's his name, trying to talk about buying Canada and what is that, Iceland and all kind of Mexico and Panama. It's just like, we need to guard against that, and we need to. I think we have to educate people that this is anything new. They start talking about taking the Philippines back. I mean,
right. What's his name? Reagan. When Reagan came to power, the whole "Make America Great Again" thing with Reagan had to do with the loss of the Panama Canal.
Right.
And that, I mean, I was like one, but I mean, but historically, in the studies of that, understanding that was an important moment. Then, I mean, even the way through which just this sort of reactionary white masculinity that really been around for over 50 years now has really, really obsessed with the loss of Vietnam and what that means, and all this other crazy nonsense, and the way in which that's fed into so much of the reactionary culture. And there's a book called Warrior Dreams.
Sense of taking losses, right? There was this sense that they had been taking losses, right?
Right. So I just wanted to. I didn't mean to cut up, but I just really uniting with what you were talking about, because they can't. The problem is they can't see a future, right? Even the white sector can't see a future. All they have to grasp to is the past. And I forget which person is that said that nostalgia is a form of depression. They can't see a future, so they're holding on to the past, and this is why the struggle over culture is important, because we know that the revolutionary culture of African people allows for the creation allows for the promotion of a progressive future for all of us. A book that I really like, a person who's really been vital to the Hands Off of Rural campaign, is Professor Robin Kelly's Freedom Dreams, which essentially makes that thesis of the role of culture, the revolutionary importance of the role.
And I think it's so the rise in reaction it's occurring in the settler colonies. That's where it's happening, right? There's a rise of the right in New Zealand, right in Australia, and it's representative of the crisis that they're experiencing because of these victories. Incremental as they may be, nonetheless, they're real victories and bubbling up from below. Right? I'm just hearing about whatever's going on in Benin, right? But there's already been the Sahelian states, right? The Alliance of Sahelian States, and that bubbled up from below. And that pressure in the streets is why Chad and Senegal, right, are getting on board in some kind of way, or at least demanding the French leave. And as of yesterday, Ivory Coast is the French have to get out military anyway, right? And partly because I think some of those neo-colonial governments are trying a way to survive because of the pressure coming from below, to get the French out. Now, behind that, go ahead and get the Americans out, too. And in all these places, it's razor thin, right? It's this past election, right? It was a 1.5% difference in the winner and the loser of the bourgeois election. The left coalition in France won, but again, that was after a major rise in the right that mobilized people. But that's where it's happening. In the global South, among colonized folks, there isn't a reaction in that way, but just what you've been talking about, folks who see that they are the future, right? The youth of the African continent, for example, right? The youth of the South American continent. I mean, that is the future, and that future is, tired of capitalism, tired of enslavement, looking for new ways to do it, and so that's why they're clinging hard. Right? How do we hold on to our claimed position, right, as the leaders of the world, right? What they like to call the president, the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
Without irony, right? They say, right? So, but that that's where the reaction's happening, right? In what they call the West, right? This is where it's happening. as arrangements are changing around the world, and they're having a difficult time. They can, in a sense, they can see the future, and the fact that it's so split shows that there's a significant number of the descendants of the colonizers who recognize the future, right, and are prepped for change, right, prepped to go along with it. Again, what 1.5%. I mean, and it's like this in all these places where the right is winning. It's barely winning, right, among those voters.
Yet they call it a mandate.
Yet they call it a mandate, right? Because the messaging, right? The messaging.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, because I mean, as you know, with the attack on the Houthi, 2 of the Houthi are white, but they're white people working for African liberation, and but that underscores the contradiction, because in the past, to attack the African Revolution, they just attack African people in such a violent way that it forces other African people out of political life. It, it incentivizes white people to not show any unity with African people, or they'll be attacked in the same way. But the truth is that I think with the anti-colonial struggles taking place around the world, anti-colonial resistance being led by my organization, African People's Socialist Party, when you look at it like that, white folks ain't gonna go dread their hair up or, learn how to do the stanky leg or whatever that is, to show unity with African people, right? They can unite with overturning the social system and creating a new set of relations between them and other people in the world. And I think because the truth is, like, with their consciousness being thrown into dismay, or some are going to be some are doing crazy stuff, all that runic stuff, and they run around the woods painting themselves with ancient symbols or something like that. But then other people are saying, well, you ain't got to do that. You could sort of unite with the colonizing and oppressive world for the creation of a new set of global relations, and that really is a threat. That shows the threat and the reason why they will attack. Black studies, CRT, DI, or whatever. In this context, because they see that as being part of this this crisis. Like I said, check out that. I can share the reading with y'all. The chairman of my Stella writes about this in that 2015 book, The Uneasy Equilibrium and the Theory of African Internationalism, where he was citing Zbigniew Brzezinski and Pat Buchanan and other people, questioning whether history was over because of the demise of America. I really like what Comrade James is talking about. It made me chuckle. How people say 1.5%. They call it a mandate.
Right.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Exactly. I mean, I would say 12 million people sitting out an election that they voted in just 4 years before is the real mandate.
That's the mandate right there. Exactly. That made the difference.
I got a friend. Her name is what's her name? But Jamise. Used to be Jamise Fort. Now Jamise Williams, I think. But Jamise, her whole research looks at the way through which a non-voting is an act of political engagement.
That's right.
Think, like I said, 12 million people saying, "Nah, we good."
That's right.
That's but I think what James is saying is important too. The question is, how do we build from there? Just sitting back and saying, "Oh, cool, Babylon the Great is fallen," that doesn't take us to the future. But I do think that the attacks that we see against progressive forces suggests that, you know, this in trying to maintain at least itself amidst the free fall of colonial capitalism, they want to attack the people who are representing a way forward. You know, I would like to say, you know, we believe in this concept of dual and contending power, you know, and in short, you know, we build for the future while we're also fighting and struggling with the systems that be right now. So we don't wait to the end to build, right? We build and we contend at the same time with the institutions. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. That's the Bruce Lee method. Offense and defense at the same time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
that's the offense and defense at the same time. Mr. eBay, right? The I want to tick off a few victories. I think, right? I think it does. You know, in the realm of electoral politics, I think it does matter. The new president of Mexico coming in, right? Sheinbaum, and that, you know, that's a progressive movement in Mexico, taking anti-colonial stances. And not only did they win the presidency, but they did well, I think, in like the local elections and the legislature, and are able to do something to, you know, clean up a very corrupt justice system. But, you know, that they are in a forward position of resistance right now, right, in the Western Hemisphere. I think the election results in Venezuela were very important, right, to keep the Socialist Party in power. Colombia has been taking, you know, some at least proper stances in regards to the movement in Palestine, right, or the liberation movement in Palestine. I think it's important. Well, you know, again, the move of the Sahelian states. It's, you know, this idea, right, of unifying instead of being these little kind of individual countries that can be picked off, is a move in the right direction. I think it's noteworthy that Ireland has joined South Africa as a complainant, you know, against the genocide, you know, bringing Israel to court, right? These and the student movement, I think, has been really critical. You know, that's one of those places where we see that suppression of anti-colonial free speech among students, or students who are being repressed, violently repressed, threatened with, you know, suspension, all this other stuff. You know, folks writing letters about don't hire these people. As well as professors, right, who are, you know, losing jobs for, you know, doing what they've been doing. You know, that's important, right? That it can reinvigorate, right, the student movement. And the number of strikes that got started, went off during 2024 locally, but, you know, globally, right? There's labor movement going on, and this recent execution of the healthcare CEO indicates, right, the sort of the United States is kind of ripe for class consciousness education, right? You know, folks are recognizing there's something different about, you know, this execution, and that it's an execution and not necessarily a random murder or whatever, right? Anyway, things that, you know, are trending toward the positive over this past year, I think, or at least worthy of note. You know, along with, as you pointed out already, Matsamela, the you know, the light sentencing, right? You know, whatever we want to call it, of the Uhuru 3, right? The that, you know, that's a major victory. Both the acquittal for the conspiracy charge, and then this, this light sentencing, right? The instead of going hardcore. So, some things to tick off for 2024, even as the Western civilization chauvinists are emboldened and, newly, maybe not so new, but quite vocal, right, about what they have in mind and planned.
Yeah, sure. One thing I'll say about Claudia Scheinbaum, which is pretty interesting, because she has Jewish ancestry, partially, but also has come out in defense of Palestine. She and that whole party, the Morena party, how it exists is interesting, because of course it's not revolutionary socialist parties of sorts, right? But they represent. I think that what we see now, whether it be on the continent, throughout Latin America, we can't forget the struggles taking place in the Pacific, Papua New Caledonia, elsewhere.
Guhan.
I think it all represents the role of masses and the peasants and the workers in driving this era of anti-colonial struggle, unlike the period that came out of the of World War II. Because there was one way through which essentially the period coming out of World War II, even though the masses of African people, it was in the best interest of the masses of African people, the people who probably had the most global consciousness at that time were members of the African middle class, because they had been the cosmopolitans running around religious societies, education, or whatever it is. But now, one thing we see with the sort of certain advances in imperialism and colonial capitalism in the last 40, 50 years has shrunken the world. So to where people can recognize the shared condition and see so I just want to say that, that I think you're right to point towards the victories in Mexico and elsewhere. That's interesting. I mean, the way through which, you ever see a meme with Stephen A. Smith? And I got problems with Stephen A. Smith, but when Stephen A. Smith says, he says, "Let me tell you like this: we don't care. We don't care." You ever see that one where he says, "We don't care"? Like I saw a meme about that where it says, the news tries to say that Luigi guy was a MAGA supporter or something like that. They says, the news tries to say, well, Luigi M. Mangione, he was a MAGA supporter. And people are like, we don't care. We don't care what you try to say about the Luigi guy. Like people don't care. They're like, So I think people are using that to say, okay, well, maybe this does signal the ability for it to be some sort of shared consciousness amongst, elements of the white working class and the colonized workers of the world. This is a good book. I don't know if you ever read this book. Anybody ever read this book by Mike Davis, Prisoners of the American Dream? So this is Mike Davis.
Like Mike Davis's work, but no.
Everybody has read, and I got this book actually on my bookshelf right next to David Rudiger's Working Towards Whiteness, right? And I think both of them speak towards the way through which whiteness has kept even white workers captive. And the thing is, the truth is, with the downward spiral of colonial capitalism, the benefits of whiteness have been shrinking. And as those benefits shrinking, we see two things. We see the rise of reaction, but we also see the progressive possibilities.
Exactly.
Hopefully that all makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Comrade Matsunella, the Pacific, and in my roll calling, I don't remember if I mentioned Hawaii. Hawaii, the uh, the Hawaiian nation was taken over in a white supremacist coup, and people don't even think of it as a nation of people. It's at this point, it's firmly America, and
Mm-hmm.
except the Hawaiians. It's like, no, we would like our sovereignty back. We would like our self-determination back. And again, that's why I think sometimes we get comfortable in thinking in terms the way this this government wants us to think.
Right.
It's part of the culture. But I did want to touch on one thing. Another thing is, I just feel a fierce need for a reinvigoration of Pan-Africanism.
Mm-hmm.
What we have, to me, it appears the breaking up, the continued breaking up. It's like J. Edgar Hoover's dream.
Mm-hmm.
You have, again, when we've talked about this, Tasha and I talked about it, the FBA, Foundational Black Americans, and ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves or Slavery or whatever, the Freedmen. And then you have all these other trains of thought and ideology that split Black folks. You have conservative Negroes. And I know some years ago they were like, yeah, we're Negroes. We're not Black. We're not African. We are Negroes. And it's continued fighting with ourselves and fighting other people. It's like calling people anchors or saying that we don't have nothing to do with nobody else. Black first, but not understanding. I think there's a lack of understanding that you can't fight an enemy that is of overwhelming numbers, that has overwhelming weaponry, that has overwhelming so-called legitimacy without allies. You have to have allies. Right. If you don't have allies, I dare anybody to say, okay, here's a political military philosophy where you don't have allies. And basically you act in the interest of the most reactionary sectors of the oppressor. The FBI, the CIA, the red squads, the black squad, it's like, what? No, we want you to stay fragmented, broke up, don't talk to nobody, don't form any alliances, and don't give a damn about anybody else. I don't give a damn about the Palestinians. I don't give a damn about these Mexicans. And I don't give a damn about these Jamaicans and Caribbeans and Africans. I don't care what's going on in that continent. Or like I say, it doesn't matter. It does matter. It does. It absolutely matters. At least from where I sit.
I find that interesting that, I think, that's what Chairman Amash Teller has, in his response to the election, suggested that he felt that our movement for liberation would be in a worse position if Kamala had won, because it would have affirmed the petty bourgeois position and abandonment towards. You can saw. I think you talked about the role of neocolonialism in all its manifestations, and FBA sounds a lot like FBI. You know what I mean? But I just find it interesting that even at a time in which white North American people are jumping ship from American identity. You get these movements clearly being funded one way or another to sort of have Black people be the face of a new Americanism, which is like I always liken it to America being an airplane, and African people saying, "Hey, how come we ain't pilots? How come we ain't pilots?" And then once that airplane starts to tip downward and it's about to crash and everybody else is hopping on, getting parachutes and hopping out. They say, "Hey, y'all want to be pilots, right? Don't y'all want to be pilots?" Oh, now we get to fly the plane when it's going like this. Now you get to fly the plane, And if you riding up the plane, then cool, that's good for the empire, right? We're gonna put you on Mount Rushmore, but if not, we're gonna blame you for it crashing. As opposed to saying, hey, we need a way to get off this plane and do something for ourselves and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to interject that and say, hey, it's really remarkable way in which we see people doubling down on whiteness or whatever, even when white folks are running away from Americanism and things like that. It's like the face of AFRICOM is African 4-star general for the Marine Corps, and all people say is, well, it's great to see.
Probably change. All that will probably change very soon. Right. That is again. Bernie Sanders was right. It was about identity politics this particular election cycle, but specifically white identity and white male identity politics, right? And if they could assert white hetero male identity, right, was critical, right? So a lot of that will change. But I think that it also speaks to the people who stayed home, right? A lot of Black folks stayed home who otherwise might, because they were just like not having it anymore. There was no, they weren't going to vote for Trump, and they just weren't really having it with Biden or Harris, right, as the alternative. So they stayed home.
I'd like to go back a couple of steps back to James talking about the need for allies, the importance of allies, looking at some of our brainstorm and some of the topics that we wanted to look at. And one, just a nod to the making the democratic space for blackface, the failure of the empire in blackface. Yusuf and I love to talk about the propaganda, and there's so many images of Black cops, so many Black cop stories. And so, talking about the informing and conditioning power of entertainment media, right? Propaganda, military agenda. Every time you turn around, you see a Black man or woman in a uniform, right?
Spy-aganda,
all of those things. But your all's reflections and opinions on two things. In this volatility, there is a lot of call and recognition, as there has been, but it's kind of the volumes turned up on the recognition for the need for political education. So the first question is, what ideas, issues, histories, concepts, any of that ought to be central in this education and in this time going into dealing with the set of issues that are on the table, the key things that you're talking about. And the second thing that folks are talking about is, this need for a united front, the need for organizing, the need for folks to connect. So what is the status of that? Okay. And who are the most likely to unite around what issues, locally, nationally, internationally? What are your reflections on that? So if I said too much, I can repeat the first thing, but if not, please, what are your reflections?
Yeah, I'm old, so I forgot what you said.
Okay, so the first part is the what are the key in response to the call for political education, right? That's happening, right? Everybody's recognizing the crisis in systematic education of the American population, at least, and within movement spaces, the kind of a lack of continuity with the intellectual legacy as well. What are the priority concept, issues, and histories for political education moving into 2025?
Yeah, see that I forgot about it because I guess it's such a hard thing to think about. Even this is a conversation I've been having with numerous comrades in terms of setting up some kind of political education, both historical, uh, innovative, even I guess you would call it administrative. But how do you how do we um, go forward and make a difference? How do we do it? And what kind of uh, what are we going to teach? I mean, it's been some rudimentary stuff that's been put out there, and people think they're educated, but they haven't read, and sometimes they're discouraged from reading. You know, the time of well, anyway, this Comrade Sitawa, one of those who led the hunger strike, he was reflecting on our comrade, late comrade Jitu Siddiqui, and he said when he came into the prison camp, he was running wild, and G2's like, "Here, read this book." And he said it got to the point he was running away from G2 because G2 was always giving him books to read. He said, "Oh no, another book? Oh, but where is that? And if it exists, what books are they reading? I mean, what value do they have? What political thought are they following? Keeping track of? You know, how do you run an organization? I mean, I'm faced with an issue now where it looks like someone may have mishandled money, you know, and we've dealt with this in the past. You know, y'all know people messing around with money, people saying, "Oh, forget nonprofits," but then taking money out of the community and mishandling it. So I think there's different ways that political education needs to be taught and implemented, and I really don't see it now, except in organizations like the African People's Socialist Party, even the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and other cadre type organizations. But in terms of in a community where, you know, how do you deal with gang banging? Do you collaborate with the police? And or why don't you? Or why should you? Or why should you not? And having people think about that and coming up with, you know, oh no, you people are crazy. You don't want to deal with the police. Hell no, I don't want to deal with the police. That's a disaster. Well, why is that? And even trying to conceive why you shouldn't, and why that has not worked to our benefit. You know, how do you organize people? You know, even if it's on a survival level, having a community refrigerator, having communal housing. I mean, there's just all kind of things to think about. So not just, you know, the following the political thought of certain thinkers, but how to run a day-to-day movement and struggle. I think it's. I mean, it's a big task and a lot to think about, but I just think it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, can I think the first one was priority of concepts of issues, then the role of political education. What was the other question?
The other question had to do with the call for united front, right?
Yes, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And I really appreciate Comrade James for his responses, and I think it really hits home some of the stuff I've been saying throughout. I like that, because when you talk about former incarcerated people, what they tell you is you go to the prison library and you can read all the Donald Goines books and all the Iceberg Slim books, but all the stuff we would want to send them is listed as contraband material and banned. And I'm telling you, as the International People's Democratic Horde Movement, we have something called the George Jackson Jesse Woods program, where we send books and literature to incarcerated African men and women, because we want those prisons to be African internationalist universities. But the books getting turned away, the literature being turned away. They're turning away. We're sending a whole pack of study guides, and they said, well, you use yellow envelopes. You're supposed to use white envelopes, and all this other ridiculous nonsense, just to put that roadblock up there. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, people. So I think the question that Comrade James, he shouted out the African People's Socialist Party, African People's Revolutionary Party, organizations that have cadre formation, but then also raised the question of what does it mean for us how are we going to get out there with the people? And my organization is called the International People's Democratic Horde Movement, and that's our goal, to be out there with the people, to bring the masses of people back into political life and political consciousness. Because the truth is that by the sheer experience of African people colonized within the United States and elsewhere, they can understand it. But we have to be the ones being there and guiding people to that sort of larger level of understanding, or at least the conclusions, right? Because we all know that we ain't have money, housing is jacked up, relationships are jacked up, food is scarce. So those things, but to what end? So I think that's where the role of mass political education comes in. And then you talk about the role of culture. I've been really inspired by some of the culture that has been produced. Even some of these limited series coming out in films, things like they cloned Tyrone, stuff Sorry to Bother You, I'm a Virgo, that whole Atlanta series, and that stuff has limits to it, but I think that it does even more than just being amongst the vanguard itself. I think it represents a shift, a shift in the tide. So I'm really and then the role of solidarity. I mean, you're absolutely correct. Us being courageous enough to wage these struggles with people around. Because someone asked me this. Someone says this cultural sameness doesn't mean political unity, and of course it doesn't. You're colonized. I said cultural sameness could mean conflict. I said, I use this debate. I said, look, December 30th, and me and another African is looking at a bag of black eyed peas, and there's only one bag of black eyed peas left at the store. We're gonna fight for that bag of black eyed peas. And the reason I said December 30th, not 31st, because you got to soak your beans for at least a day. So we know that. So you're gonna be December 30th if you looking for them beans. If not, you probably getting them glory beans and trying to make them seem like they wasn't canned. But 30th, look, now I'm fighting another African because we both want that bag of beans. because of the fact that we don't control production of them beings, right? So because we don't control that resource, now we got to fight each other over it. At the very least, what we need to do is have the wherewithal to say, hey, we need to split this bag of beans, first and foremost. Somebody needs to give us the political conscience and say, you need to split that bag of beans. Don't fight another African over it. And then from there, we need to be creating a world in which we don't have to fight each other over the basic resources that we have. That's the role of importance of having sort of global consciousness. Global consciousness does not take away from the local struggles we engage in. In fact, it actually heightens the importance of the local struggles that we engage in. You know, and I could talk about it all the time, but you know, I was proud enough to grow up at least part of my youth in the anti-apartheid struggle, and the way through which we clearly understood. If it was at Long Beach State in the late 80s, I remember they had accused some black, an African student of stealing from the bookstore, and the whole BSU and the black student population and black Long Beach rose up in defense of this student at the Long Beach State bookstore. For them, that was a local theater in a larger struggle for African liberation. It wasn't just a small issue, because if it's just a small issue, then it's going to be insignificant, you know. But for us to be able to see ourselves as a part of this larger struggle, it doesn't take away from the particularities of our struggle. It really enhances them, and that don't mean that we don't hold our people, allies or people in solidarity to a higher level. We do. We need to hold them, and that's why we need organizational leadership. But like I said, I mean, I've seen this situation, and I just want to say that it's rarely a African. You rarely find people who hold to socialist principles who are incapable of seeing the necessity of us finding unity amongst other people. The truth is, all African people are colonized. And so within our anti-colonial struggle, you have elements that are still hold on to petty bourgeois and even capitalist ideals. And it's generally those factions that I've always seen say, because it's so crazy. I don't want to go into it, but I'm from Long Beach, California, born and raised Long Beach, California. I grew up at the moment in which Africans started fighting Mexicans. It was terrible. It was terrible. So I'm not interested in being in political spaces where that's the language. It was a terrible moment to grow up in, but I've seen people so willing to fight all the other colonized people and don't never say nothing when white folks walk in. And I'm not saying fight them, but you know what I'm saying? It's just absolutely crazy. It's
absolutely crazy. You see that playing out in South Africa, right? People ready to go after folks from Mozambique. Malawi.
Right.
But they ain't gonna do nothing about those squatters who've been there for a few hundred years, right? But they will
no. They actually have a whole consciousness that suggests that they're all South Africans.
Right.
Right. So they literally have a revolutionary party, but this goes back to the whole problem of the Freedom Charter itself. You know, nobody want to say that. You know, the whole Freedom Charter says South Africa is for everybody. I mean, South Africa
should not leave it unsaid, though.
Yeah.
I just want to. Somebody just said, "Yeah, go ahead."
No, I'm done. I was ranting, but yeah.
Well, I was just reminded that it isn't reported regularly, but many of those white farmers are being picked off, right, in South Africa. And I remember an activist from the anti-apartheid struggle, Mrs. Christian, she said it very specifically. The Africans remember who did what, and they're taking care of them on the farms, and no one wants to cover it, right, in the news. But you get out of line, somebody remembers, and so they.
Remember Dylan Roof shot up that church.
Say again.
Remember Dylan Roof shot up that church. Remember the picture that emerged of him. Yes. He had the Rhodesian flag and the Union of South Africa flag. So here's the deal: if the white nationalists can see themselves as part of some international community, why would I accept some sort of division in my African consciousness? You know what I mean? So he's in South Carolina, probably ain't even ever been to Tennessee, and he sees himself connected to people in Rhodesia, a place that didn't exist for the last 50 years, and the Union of South Africa, because that but we not supposed to see ourselves connected to people in Zimbabwe and Zambia. That don't even make no sense. It just really don't make sense. What are things that like some people, but what I'll say is this is there's a good book called The Ties That Bind by Bernard Malgubani.
Yeah.
And essentially in short, what I think he would say is that when African resistance is high, African identity is high. You know, so it's the responsibility for us to continue to raise resistance, to make revolution, that's going to continue to rise. 'Cause, I mean, I saw the people that were doing the whole ADOS thing. It's crazy to see them within a year take positions that they were even against. You know, one guy who was out of LA, like his stuff was pretty on point. Then he started taking positions was even right opposing just because out of pure opportunism. But the truth is that stuff is needed, and we need a better way for it.
So I think that's a key point, right? Key point that you make, James, that reasserting, right, that the global, the unity of African people everywhere. It is only in the interest of the colonizer to keep us in our little camps. And I think that point was made, Dr. Jared Ball makes that point, or that's one of the points that he takes away from the film Soundtrack to a Coup, looking at the use of African-American jazz musicians, and that's juxtaposed with the removal of Patrice Lumumba. They make it very clear, right? The colonizers make it very clear what they fear more than anything is African people getting unified, right? Folks getting together around the world more than they fear communism. They fear that, right? That African unity. So that's been, I think, really key. Promoting these little micro national identities, right? Jamaican, Trinidadian, Black American, right? With the emphasis on American, etc. And that somehow we're different, right? And almost fatally different.
And beyond that, you got the dirty South, and then you got the left coast. Then you got, the New York and the Bronx and the Brooklyn, and we always again looking for an identity, and instead of embracing a larger identity where you can have, I'm an African, I'm a new African, I'm from LA, or I'm from LaGrange, Georgia. All that can be valid, but looking at it within the greater context of African unity, because what sense does it make to have a continent full of natural resources if other people control them? And how do you get control of your resources if you don't work in concert with others to seize that, to break the grip? So it's baffling. It's puzzling, but you have people who want to be separate, and again, you want to ask, why do you want to be separate? Why do you want to stand on your little corner again? Or like in this,
I just say this pure opportunism. You got some people, and I won't even say the names, but one guy, he used to make pimp videos, and now he pimp Black history, and that to me is just ridiculous. but it's just such a short view of the world and the African role in it. And I think it's just, like I said, like a pimp would, taking advantage of the limited view of people who've been victimized by the social system. I remember I remember watching that documentary, and then that guy, I think the Hughes brothers did something a little bit different with that documentary, American Pimp, than people realized what they were doing. They remember that there's that scene in which the guy Don Juan says, you know, he talks about how they prey on the people who've been molested.
I think we're losing you, Matsamela.
Okay.
Can you repeat that?
Oh yeah. I'm in a home. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, it's our, this all goes back to what Comrade Tasha, Sister Tasha, talked about, the role of us promoting African, political education and culture and all these things, connecting it, because culture alone don't free us, but culture is important and pointing the direction towards freedom and setting the basis towards what it's going to look like when we are free. What I tell people, if you think Black folks can cook now, imagine how we're going to cook when we're free. You think Black folks are sing and dance now, could dress our butt off now? How are we going to sing, dance, and dress once we free? You know what I mean? So the tip of the iceberg. It's on the tip of the iceberg. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, I want some of the Black Eyed Peas, you know.
Hey, I had something that was amazing yesterday. It was like, and then I had a sweet potato pie. I went to a Kwanzaa event coordinated by some people in San Diego who've been doing it for almost 60 years. And
nice.
And this food was so good, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So next time I see you, I'm gonna try to make some Black Eyed Peas.
Okay, and some greens and cornbread, all that.
All that.
Yes.
But also for those people who don't want to engage in what considered a slave diet, I take some bean soup and some bean pie too.
That'll work.
Oh yeah. But that's not.
There's nothing about that. That's a slave diet. There's nothing.
And why is that, Tasha?
The rich.
Right. Somebody says soil food. It's soil food.
And where are these things coming from, and what do they represent? What does it mean to make cornbread as a descendant of Africa and indigenous land? What does it mean to maintain the preparation of greens, of dark greens, and what in the whole African world do you not find that?
Exactly.
IP, et cetera. All these
the Black Eyed Peas.
My great grandma lived on like 63rd and Central. She lived on 63rd and Central, and every time I showed a picture of me and the rest of my family, is sitting in her front yard. My in-laws that are from the Caribbean think it's in the West Indies. People think it's maybe somewhere in the deep South. I say this is in the heart of the hood. Well, my great grandma lived to be at least 106 years old, possibly 107, because they wasn't issuing out birth certificates in Northwest Louisiana. Right. And we also asked her how she lived very long. She said, first off, I grew the vegetables that I ate, and I prayed every day. So, and that's African. That's African. The other thing is that and her grandma came here on a slave ship, and so she died in 2006, and her grandma came on a slave ship. So I was raised partially by a woman who was raised partially by a woman who came on a slave ship. So Africa ain't that far away for us. We got to be understanding of that, and So, and the other thing too is that I saw this documentary and I was part of this whole movement, about getting a slave diet. But the one thing that I think really we can't miss out is the way through which living in an industrial capitalist economy ruined us. Because what happened was when you look at what the people coming off them plantations, John Blassingame shows you that the average person living on a plantation was only getting 600, 800 calories a day. Them plantations were concentration camps. You look at the pictures of people coming off the plantations, and it's no different than however, what happened was you could move from the South to the North, where you was making in the South $100 a year. You can make in the North $100 a month, but they're not letting you get that $100 a month so you could be wealthy, so you could turn that money right back over to industrial capitalism, so you could become a consumer. They was moving Africans from the South to the North to become consumers. So the problem is now you got to work 12-hour shifts, 14-hour shifts at the plant, and the only thing you can do now is go spend your money to go and buy some food that's already prepared. So you look at all them people, the Colonel. How many people know who made their money off of selling people food that at best Africans was eating once a month? You couldn't eat no fried chicken every single day down south, because where are you gonna get the eggs? Right. Yeah. You know, so I think that, and then what happened was they told us, well, because you was enslaved, you couldn't eat like the wealthy folks. Now you can eat like the wealthy folks every day. Then so we can talk about that too, the way through which this urban existence has done a number on us, and ways to work around it. But one thing I just want to say, I want to shoot out Africatown. I want to shout out the developments all throughout South Los Angeles, the developments that the Hur movement is leading in St. Louis, with the Black Power Blueprint and the community garden, the developments taking place all throughout Detroit, throughout Mississippi, Georgia, and so many other places in the U.S. and also around the world, in which Africans are redefining the relationship between ourselves and even the urban area around us. I mean, it's fruits and vegetables growing in our sidewalks that we don't realize we can take advantage of. I mean, half them things don't need but an inch of soil to grow, for us to sort of be able to feed ourselves. So just want to just salute
education too, right? That those kinds of things you can do.
But I appreciate y'all.
How more enslaved can a diet be than to be restricted to Colonel Sanders and Popeyes and McDonald's and whatever is available. Say that again.
Taco Bell,
etc.
Right.
Heavy in sugar, heavy in fat, heavy in starch.
All of that.
Right. I mean, geez, that high fructose corn syrup, the way they done plug that in everything.
Well, now they pimping cane sugar as better.
Raw organic.
And I had to call out Magic Johnson, but he got that Krispy Kreme donut on the corner of Crenshaw. I was like, "Are you part of this genocide?"
Oh, that's his. Okay.
Yeah. Well, at least it was.
And the whole point with and what's crazy is this though. You better off eating a Krispy Kreme donut than drinking an Arizona iced tea. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what's crazy. Yes. Right. But the thing is, you go into our community and you're a young African kid and you got $3 in your hand and you hungry and you thirsty. And the only thing offered to you is that stuff. I'm not even saying the sugar-free stuff is actually better, but it's not even accessible.
Right.
You ever walk into our communities and you can't even get the sugar-free alternatives of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
You know. Really? So if you want to talk about that relationship that some communities have, that we can have that conversation because that has a colonial basis to it, right? But the way through which other people, I think we can hold people accountable. Say, hey, well, over there you get treated just like us, and over here you find yourself in a situation in which you participating in that same system to our demise. But then you say, what's the alternative? What alternative is us having true unity with each other, you abandoning your commitment to a system that can make life better for you at our expense. And like I said, I can't stand when I go into these places. I mean, you got a quart of milk that's 3 days from expiration, and it's 2 times as expensive as it would be at a grocery store. But you know, South Los Angeles has the least amount of grocery stores to its population in like almost any urban city in the US. South Los Angeles has the least amount of green public park space than any large city in the United States. So then you want to talk about why people fighting over parks? It ain't just the Crips and Bloods fighting over parks. You know, and then all the parks are closed. All the rec centers are closed.
And then they close the rec centers, right? Exactly.
Rec centers got plywood on the walls. So we gotta demand all that stuff be turned back over to the people.
Tasha, you were about to say something? Were you about to say something, Tasha?
Whatever it was, it's gone now.
It'll come back.
It'll come back.
No, but this is in terms of, you know, what we're supposed to be talking about on this show. Victories and defeats, and what are the prospects for the future. And I think some of these things that we've just talked about in terms of food production, food distribution, reclaiming spaces, claiming spaces. Now, not reclaiming, because we have we have to find space. Creating centers for organizing, creating places to distribute food, all that stuff that we need to be doing. And in terms of political education, I mean, you go downtown and you want something to eat, you gotta listen to the word, you know, what they want to tell you.
That's right.
And I think that's a way to get people's attention and get people committed. So I know, you know, we kind of meandering about food and all that, but
really,
that's central. That's central because hungry as people are now, they're about to be hungrier.
Yes,
and whatever that timeline looks like, you know, a year, give it up, you know, whatever that, hungrier, more unhoused, more materially desperate. So yeah, what do activists look like in as an answer, as having some kind of answer to those questions? You know what I'm saying? As they're arising and people are becoming more desperate, what kind of relationships do folks have with people in the community? And they're obviously established organizations, large and established organizations like African People's Socialist Party have long-standing and well-developed relationships, but that, you know, there needs to be more in a whole lot more places. And this issue of food sovereignty and the kind of quote unquote political education that immediately emerges from questions of food sovereignty and the ability to eat, that's key. I mean, that's key. The ability to produce food. When Fumi was working with us as a food enthusiast for, you know, many, many years, her next move was hydroponically. How can I grow foods in the home? You know, whose source and nutritive value I can vouch and attest that I've cultivated, and these kinds of things. So that's very relevant, very revolutionary, right? And even in the context, or moreover, in the context of companies like Monsanto, and who was the other one? The big seed patenters, the big, you know, control over the food supply monstrosities.
Yeah, the agribusiness people. That's
agribusiness. Yeah, these.
Was it Archer Daniels or somebody like that?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, those big agribusiness folks. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
But yeah, to free. Yeah, it's a couple things I support. You know, because like to free people You got to feed the people. I think Huey said that. But I think also, see, I love the Panthers, but I think that's sort of what they did was even more than just survival programs, right? It was that dual and contending power that I spoke. It was more than survival. I mean, I think many people cut because it wasn't simply survival pending revolution. What they were able is to sort of have people understand what the future going to like once we take control of those resources completely. And of course, we can't. By what James is talking about, this is absolutely important because it lets people know what power looks like in our hands and connect that with political education, because you see the way through which there have been, I say, a religious proxy war on the continent of Africa by way of the Wahhabi Muslims and the evangelical Christians. They gone in there and just had their own neo-colonial strategy all throughout the whole continent by setting up schools, by building houses and hospitals, because by you know, then going and they say, okay, well, if you want to eat here, you want to live here, you want your kids to go to school, you know, come over here and burn them witch bracelets and take and but you got to take these books first. I saw this whole documentary, and this is getting towards the point. I saw this documentary on these things called jiggers or something like that. There's these things that live in the soils, parasites that live in the soils that sort of infect the feet of the children in places like Uganda because of the feces and stuff like that in the soil from the animals. Well, this church was like, give us all the resources so we can go over there and get the jiggers out the feet of the people. I'm like, get people the get the people they land back and their resources back, and they can pay their roads and give their shoes.
Right.
It's like, so you know, that's the solution, and not a solution that keeps us dependent on you, or vice versa, keeps you dependent on us. Because the truth is, it's not just us being dependent on them; it's them who are dependent on us, because we have the resources and the power. We just got to take it. But yeah, man, I really appreciate this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yes,
I appreciate. I guess some of the Black Eyed Peas, though.
Hey, I am on it, and I'm going to contact the comrade for that recipe. And next time I'm in LA, we have something, I'm bringing those Black Eyed Peas to the potluck.
And some cornbread.
Yeah, and some MF cornbread. You ever see that white guy who make the cornbread out of Louisiana? He's called Cooking with Cajun. He this whole thing cornbread, it says. But yeah, he calls it the MF cornbread. You know.
MF, okay.
But yeah, that cornbread, yeah, gotta have it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how much time we got, but I did want to mention before we left the transition of Bilal Sunni Ali.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Bilal, he just passed?
He just passed.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he'd been ill a long time. And he I believe he had congestive heart failure. His I think I can't remember. I'll send it out. His janazah was either today or tomorrow.
Wow.
But that was a great brother, and I've he again, sometimes it's like you look and you see what someone has done with their life. And he's one who has done so much. He's done so much, and it's almost like, well, you know, he fulfilled his life purpose. He did more than enough for his life. But a cultural worker, a revolutionary worker, or an organizer, Black Panther Party, alleged Black Liberation Army, and if we did a 2 hours worth of conversation with him, And it's very enlightening. I was about being in California and being part of a collective. Didn't barely scratch the surface. Good brother, and just wanted to mention that.
Yes.
We had him on our podcast, Black Power Talks, a couple years ago, speaking about Imam Jamil Alameen and the role he was leading in that struggle. And I want to give a shout out to his son. I forget his son's first name, but his son is a part of Africa Town Coalition.
The core.
Yes. So that is my condolences. I've been so busy in the last couple of days. I saw something come through with his name on it, but I didn't realize it was about his transition. So
Let me also take a moment, and I am remiss, this should have been at the beginning, to uplift Nzinga Kamara's name.
That's right.
My godmother, my Iya, my initiatrix into wet traditional dance form, and part of the original cultural cadre who brought Guinea style dance, that djembe oriented style dance, to the US, right? To plant those seeds and have it now flourish and spread out and be, almost commonplace. She was one of those original cultural seed planters, taught all over the country and in many spaces in the world, taught us to be ambassadors of the culture. And after the mission and vision of the Ballet Africain of independent Guinea. And I take a moment to lift her up. She passed on the 18th of December and is dearly remembered and beloved by many. It has often been said that there's no one who does African dance in LA who was not taught first or at some point by Nzinga Kamara. So long may her light shine.
That's right.
Their lights shine. Matza Miller, you want to announce that there's something with Africa Town tomorrow, you said?
Yeah, tomorrow 10 a.m. in Skid Row. There's going to be a demonstration led by Africa Town Coalition and the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement that's going to go and show solidarity with the struggles there. For more information, you can just contact us on our Instagram page. That's _INPDUM. I'll go ahead and put it here in the comments. _INDPUM.
You're putting it in the comments, you said. Okay, good.
On Instagram, if you want questions around that. Or you can email us at info@impedum.org. Like I said, we're not organizing, but we're showing up in support of that action, especially as we talk about all the thing that's going crazy, those resources. You talk about in LA, the average house price is over $1 million. It's $800,000 in South LA at least to buy a house.
Yeah, it is.
So, $300,000 just to rent a 3-bedroom. $33,000 just in a 3-bedroom.
Any announcements, James?
Not at the moment. I got something brewing, but I did want to say in reference to Bilal Soni Ali and Nzinga, Sister Nzinga, and Amakar Cabral and Thomas Sankara, the words of Fukia Mutseke, a Congo scholar who admonished us to hold up that which holds us up.
Mm.
Yes.
Right on.
Yes. So be it.
Well, Well, I guess that does bring us to the end of the conversation for the evening. Do you have anything? Do we have any announcements, Tasha?
We do not. Folks,
We'll be back next week.
like, subscribe, and share. And yes, as Brother Yusuf just said, we'll be back next week, ready to launch into 2025.
Yes, ready to launch into 2025. Resist and move forward. Don't care who's coming into office. They're going to do what they do anyway. We got to do what we need to do.
That's correct.
Yeah. Agitate, educate, organize.
There we go.
That's it. That's it. Don't agonize, organize.
That's right. So I guess with that, then we'll go ahead and say good evening to y'all folks out there in YouTube land and Facebook world. We appreciate you, tuning in with us. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat, Tasha, to remind you to please subscribe, please like. Apparently, this is very important for the algorithm, and we could use algorithmic help. And share. Maybe more than anything, share. Get the word out, right? And speaking of political education, I mean, this is one of the things we're trying to do here is offer some political education, some critical education for the community. Right now, more of a digital community, but we'll be back on the ground to go with our digital work again soon. So, comrades, thank you again for, chopping it up with us. Forward ever, backward never. And we'll see you soon.
Right on.
And yes, Tasha. Yeah, I guess that's it, right? We will be back. There's plenty coming up and for us to look forward to and be ready for as we get ready for the reign of the Antichrist, aka Donald Trump, and his minions.
His minion.
So we will see y'all soon.